Hi. Hi.
Hey man, let's go.
I'm here with Sergey.
We're here at Hack Week 2023.
Follow me on Twitter, guys.
Yeah, you can do that.
Oh my god.
Okay, that works.
Alright. Hi. This is So Crooked.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm here with Sergey. Today we're going to talk about themes. Sergey is the man, the myth, legend behind themes. You did a lot of the back-end architecture and the data design, and we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of themes as desired for years from thousands of Replit users, and then we're going to go to the implementation and just tell a little story along the way of how you mainly wanted this thing to feel and look and work. So maybe we start off with what the problem was. Why themes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the introduction, Jesse. So themes was a really important project for us. It has historically been one of our most requested features to date, if not the number one most requested feature to date. It's pretty obvious why themes are immensely popular in other IDEs, especially VS Code, but for many years, since the dawn of IDEs almost, they've been themed. Because at the end of the day, users and especially developers want the ability to customize their workspace. So they want it to feel like theirs. So it was something that was historically missing from our platform. There wasn't a particularly great reason why we hadn't added it earlier, besides the fact that it just fell low on our priority list relative to all the other cool features we wanted to work on. And it was a little bit more difficult up until we refactored a lot of how our UI and our tokening CSS variable system works. So there were a number of decisions that were made in the last year and a half, in terms of re-architecting a lot of how our UI works that unblocked this kind of work and made it easier to make custom themes in the first place.
And this is a unique set of challenges, right? Because developing a IDE is something that you could theme probably much more easily on the desktop or a local environment. But since this is all on the web, talking about CSS and tokening and how you get in the weeds there, it's a lot more tricky, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot that's going on here. It's one of those features that sounds kind of trivial, but as soon as you start implementing it, especially on a platform like ours, you see the complexities arise very quickly. So it's definitely a really fun challenge. Happy to answer any specific questions.
Why did it take so long?
Why did it take so long? It's a great question. People have been frustrated. So what's funny is the actual feature development end to end really took about 4 months, which is not that long given the scale of what the scope of what we achieved as well. Yeah. But the thing that took a long time was us starting that work in the first place.
How do you scope it?
How do you scope it? Well, there were a number of things that we that was tricky, and we had to kind of figure that out over time, because themes is one of those projects where you can go down a lot of rabbit holes, but we wanted to get something out to our users as quickly as possible and have it be a good experience, and have it cover the kind of 95% of cases, right? Because at some point you might want to theme really granular things, and we can add support for that down the line, but there were some kind of bare minimum requirements we wanted to have. But I think the kickstarting the work itself took a long time for the reasons I mentioned earlier. It wasn't historically a huge priority for us because again, we were a super small, lean team working on a million different things, and we kind of prioritized other power features.
And we just switched, right?
And
we went from Monaco.
We switched our editor. There's a bunch of different migrations happening in place to helped set the groundwork for this. Our UI library Rui really unblocked most of this work. So we were kind of between that being the case, a lot of our architecture in the web app was not conducive to such a thing, and it just wasn't worth the effort compared to some of the other initiatives we had in the last couple of years. the origins of this project. Eventually, we really just started this in August of last year of 2022, and I would say we more or less finished. It's never done. We're going to keep adding to it, but we more or less hit our milestones and our goals in late December of that same year. So really, about 4 months of like solid work is kind of what all it took. And during that time, there were between 1 and 3 engineers and between 0 and 1 designers on the project the whole time. So we really had a team of 4 at most.
Mike Hadley, Eddie, and
So
Devin as the designer.
Yeah. So Mike was around from the beginning. In fact, I kind of took the project over from him in August when I kind of transitioned to joining and leading this, because he had been kind of working on the solo in the background part time, and was also busy with bounties and other work. So it was decided that I would come in and lead this project, and I was really happy to. It was a cool thing to work on. And so Mike was kind of the main engineer that was working with me throughout that time. Devin came in as well as like kind of the design lead. But again, his time was split across a lot of things just because we have a lot more engineers and designers, and our designers are working on many things. But I would say he committed about 50 to 80% of his time at any given point. Nice. But that's really kind of all we needed, because a lot of us are also like product thinkers. Yeah. So like a lot of the product stuff was handled. But so Devin came in, design lead, shortly after I joined. I came in to lead the project starting in August. Mike was pretty much lead engineer on it as well.
And when you're talking about scope, you have the sense of like, we switched to CodeMirror, and we have this new very extensible system, right? That's kind of what unlocks a lot of this, as well as like Replit UI or Rui. Could you talk a little bit about primitive, like focusing on fundamentals and primitives that let you do the work that you want to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's really important. I think that a lot of these things happen almost by accident. Like when we switched to Rui and like re-architected how much of our UI works, essentially what we ended up doing was going with like a CSS variable approach where everything is kind of, these variables are declared at the top level and you can swap out the values at any time. That's what switching between light and dark mode does. And so that kind of paved the way for a system like this, because the way that like themes work globally, like outside the editors, they're just using these CSS tokens, right? And so it's not necessarily that we like stopped and like took a step back. And same with the editor migration, right? Like we weren't thinking about themes and doing that, but it helped make it easier. But it's more so just like continually re-architecting our system in such a way that it is scalable and we get these things out of the box, more or less, even if they're not an immediate use case when we go to implement these things.
So when you talk about tokens and architecting the CSS, can you show us a little bit of the theme editor and what it took to get that list of all those things that you can customize and what it took to get those in place?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Feel free to.
First of all, there's a few places you can go to create a theme. This is, I can talk about this a bit later, but you have the theme explorer page here, but we can go in, we can create our theme. We can give it, a fancy name like my fave dark theme. You can give it a color scheme, light and dark mode. And that will basically, show in the themes explorer page, you can tell like whether the theme is light or dark, and you can
And that helps for discoverability.
Helps for discoverability because a lot of people go out of their way to look for a dark mode theme or vice versa. So this is my fave theme. Then you go and you create a theme. So now you're kind of launched into the global theme editor. And this is kind of the place where you go and edit and create your theme. And you can see there's a few kind of core pieces here. The first of which is like the global theme styling. So the background, the outline, the foreground color, primary, these are kind of the global tokens that you can configure that are site-wide. So they don't just apply to the IDE. That's where you might see the most.
I think that was an interesting design decision too.
Yeah.
Because most people, I know I did, was like, okay, themes are going to come, but I didn't expect it to be site-wide. I was like, oh, these things...
I'm getting paged. Hold on.
Do we have an incident?
Yeah, I think so. Hold on.
Hi. Or wait, I already.
Hold on. How do you like even come back into it that quickly? Okay. We started or we stopped at a weird place.
So yeah, Sergey.
Action.
All right, back. We just had an incident. We had to step away for a moment.
That's actually real life at Replit, so
Yeah,
it's pretty representative of how things go here.
The web dependencies break apparently.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes it's not even your fault, and you still get paged.
Who knows? So we could jump back into themes and talk about more of the creation flow and what the technical problems were behind that, and what some of the design choices on from your side of the story was.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually like one of the most interesting parts of implementing such a project. It was really cool, and I do think we did it in a pretty novel way as well. So you can go here. Like there's a few ways to create a theme. One of which is from your account page, where you also see the custom theme switcher as well, where you might have different themes that you have installed here. And you can go and browse them, which I can show off in a bit, or you can go and create a new theme here as well. So the creation is pretty straightforward. All we really need is we need a title. You can pick a color scheme, light or dark, which will really just help with discoverability, so people know whether it's a light or dark theme of yours, and you can do some filtering based on that as well in the Explore page. So we can call this my fave theme. And then give it like a dark mode, and if you want, you can give it a description. So this is really cool. And then you just hit create theme. So you can see you're kind of dropped into the theme editor here. Yeah. You'll notice that it automatically switches to our official dark theme values because we picked dark theme. If we selected light, it would drop us into a light theme view. Yeah,
gives you like a jumping off point.
Yeah, it gives you a place to start. And so not just discoverability, but it also you can help remix the official themes more easily. And so there's a few kind of core aspects of this that you might notice off the bat. The first of which is this global theme section. So we have a short list of values here, like the background, foreground, outline, primary, and so on, that are kind of custom tokens that correspond to some of our CSS tokens that we talked about that apply across the site-wide. So in the IDE, as well as any other page that you might kind of navigate through. So that's pretty interesting, pretty cool experience. Just below that, you have the syntax highlighting editor. And so from this, you have kind of a bit of a longer list of values in the editor itself that you can update. So everything from variable names to keywords to tag names, comments, strings, numbers, booleans, operators, and so on and so forth. So that really lets you like customize the look and feel of your code as well as everything outside of the editor. So that's pretty sweet.
And you talked about aesthetics being like the driving force of themes, making your editor your own because you're living in this thing. It's you stare at your screen for hours on end when you're developing. So can you speak to a little bit of more of the tactical side of a theme? Like what use do you get from a theme that actually is more pragmatic than aesthetic?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's where syntax highlighting comes in as well because, it really lets you customize how your code looks, and that's going to be important. And I think there are certain decisions that you can make to make certain elements of your code stand out more. Maybe if you write a lot of HTML, you want your HTML tags to be a certain color and your attribute names to be a little brighter than normal. And so while I normally don't think about it from that perspective, I think that's certainly a value add for sure. And so, you could imagine you tweak it to kind of a way that is more visible and obvious to you. But the way I typically look at it is that the syntax highlighting is complementary to the global theming, right? So like you want something that matches the background and the foreground and the outline really well and like goes with your existing theme.
So how do you do that? Like if you change the background, I notice it doesn't just change one color. It almost gives you a palette.
Yeah. So so we can walk through how this works.
Yeah.
So for example, here like you might have changing the background is kind of the more obvious one. You can see you have this little like color input come up, and that might look different on your browser if you're on Chrome or Safari or Firefox. And then you can just like start playing around with the values, and maybe I want like a nice little deep purple theme. I think that looks pretty sweet. Maybe right there. You can change like the saturation and whatnot and the lightness.
Like purple.
Purple's a great color. I agree. And if you have kind of on the darker side theme, you're going to want a light foreground as well. Like that's pretty obvious because you'll see if we make it purple here, that's not very legible. So maybe we make it pink. This will pop a little bit. Make a little poppy pink color. The outline is
very reminiscent of who is that female creator who did the pink theme that blew up on Twitter?
Pink thing.
Oh, who was that? I think you tweeted about.
Oh, Alana. Yeah, Alana's
that
theme. Yeah, it's very good. It's very good.
I think it's
the second.
It's the second.
Yeah.
Used theme.
And so the outline as well is like a little subtle color, but I think it can help a theme go a long way. Totally. So you'll see that like in different borders and various aspects of the UI. So maybe we make that like kind of bluish or whatever. And this experience is just kind of fun, right? Like I can just mess around and keep tweaking the values and just see where it goes. So maybe we'll give that. Let's see. We don't want to do red.
I think you're picking up on something that I've noticed about the community in general, and probably explains why it was so desired. It's because Replit's such a playful experience that themes is something that you could play around with so much because you're literally just playing with colors.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we wanted to keep that going here as well. I mean,
totally.
We wanted to make it fun, and this is one of those kind of features and aspects of the product that you can especially make that the case. And you can see, like, as I change the values, these hex values will change with it as well. Positive, let's see, this is like for buttons and such that you might see in the UI. Maybe less visible here. We can keep that green. Negative as well for like dark colors that come up if we have a sort of a warning or something. So that's an example of like the global theme colors, and again these apply site-wide, not just in the IDE, even if you're mostly looking at the IDE. So the neat thing is you can actually turn this. You can see like these colors change like as on your screen as you edit them, which can be a little disorienting sometimes. So you can actually toggle the preview off, and that will just fall back to whatever theme you had enabled.
Cool.
So that's pretty neat. But more often than not, we'll want to see what's going on live. The other thing you'll notice is this editor here. This is meant to help with the syntax highlighting editor here. So like while you're changing syntax highlighting colors, you can see that reflected. We have a few of our most popular languages here that you can toggle through just to see how this color would look in your favorite language. I'm going to stick with JavaScript because I read a lot of JavaScript. But you can see that, variable names is a pretty clear one. I go and I can make this, some bluish color or purplish color. And you can see like first name, last name, author are all kind of changed here live. You can see something like keywords. We can go and change that. And like class and this and return are all modified.
Did this happen pretty naturally? Did you have a feel for what this was going to look like on the onset? I know Devin worked a lot with you and setting up how this thing would look, but on the back end more technically, what happened here?
Yeah, so actually one of the harder decisions that we had to make was choosing this list right here. Because with the global theme colors, you only have so many that you even have to worry about in the first place. Yeah. And like the most important ones are like these top 3 or 4, like the background, the foreground, the outline, the primary. So that's pretty easy, and that's a short list that doesn't really change and doesn't have much granularity. Whereas with the syntax highlighting, it's a lot harder of a problem because you have a lot of different token styles, and the editor is very granular in terms of like how it marks each token, meaning like any word or anything that you see here, any brace. Like so there are so for example, like there are subtags in tags, and it's like, do we want to expose that? One example is like a comment can either be a line comment, a dot comment, or a block comment, and so we had this really difficult kind of decision to make because one, even the like original kind of top level list is quite long. We don't want to overwhelm you with that kind of decision, and the other thing is a lot of these tokens might not actually be present in practice very often. So between that and between all the various like subtags, and if we wanted to expose those, it was actually kind of, we had to do a little bit of iteration to figure out what the final list was going to look like in terms of what was most important and what you could customize.
Do you remember any resources that you went out to like do research on, and like what did that research process look like?
Yeah, I think like some of them were more or less obvious. Like we knew variable names, keywords. Like I think a lot of it was just intuitive in terms of what you would think to customize. And then it was a lot of like trial error, more or less. Like we would just create a bunch of themes, the community would, and they'd say, hey, I think you're missing the ability to customize a tag in HTML. That was a thing for a little bit there. And so it's like you'll notice very quickly the most popular kind of aspects of your code. If they're not customizable, you might want to do that.
Yeah.
Or if one token is a little too broad. So like, like if you have a number class, maybe you'll want to customize like integers and floats differently. Like you can kind of see that at a certain point. So yeah, I think it's a lot of trial and error and like trying to make themes and especially in different languages because which is why we have this drop down here, because a lot of people spend a lot of time in Python or C++ and they have a bit of a different tokening system. I mean, they share all the same kind of tokens that are used in terms of the language, but they are used in different ways, and often some more often than others in certain languages. And so
I like that idea of like you're talking about how if you're mainly on HTML, you're going to want a certain color, you want a certain syntax highlighting, but also you got that, you mentioned that feedback that you got, and I wonder what, because we have a release process, right? And we try and send out an MVP as polished as we think is how would you say it? Like we want to ship something that will get traction and we'll be able to get feedback on. Do you remember any of the points of feedback that you initially got when we rolled this out to, like, it was staff and then admin, or staff is admins, and then explorers, and then a wider release?
Yeah. We actually had this out in beta for quite a long time, longer than most features we typically would, because we really wanted a lot of feedback from our users here. We knew like there were a lot of eager people in our community who wanted to create themes. They were very excited to hop on this, and we knew their feedback would be invaluable. I mean, we can sit around and deliberate all day and make Figma mocks and stuff, but at the end of the day, like getting this in the hands of users is the best way to kind of iterate on the product and see what's working well and what isn't. So that's like always a huge step in our process in terms of releasing something. We do want to get things out in the world quickly. We want them to be polished, but we don't need them to be perfect because they're subject to change. I mean, we can change things overnight if we see that it's not working.
It's the classic saying. It's like, what is it? Perfect is the enemy of the good.
Right.
So yeah, it strikes me every time we get feedback about something that comes in that's really fleshed out and really thoughtful. A lot of my job is reading user feedback or dealing with many things in support, and I'm very grateful that I get to go across a lot of our features, and I get to wear many hats and look at many things. But one of the things that struck out for me was when this thing was launched, just the overwhelming joy that came from our users. Like it's like it's just such a pleasure to read all those good experiences, and it's a testament to your work and Devin's and Eddie's and Mike's. So thank you for that. And but I guess do you remember any of like, I know Bookie was really psyched. Who was it? We have Alana here.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. I mean, like the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, which was great to see. I mean, not every feature is, and there was almost nothing that was said bad about this, and which is great. Because I think we built a good kind of system, and it was easy and fun to make themes, and you can make just about anything that you wanted to from other editors or any inspiration anywhere. So it was we struck a good balance there, and
it seems like you learned a lot about because this was a longer project, and because it was maybe a bit more fleshed out than our usual release cycle for a feature. Do you think that's right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time on this. I mean, 4 months is still quick, but I mean, we could have gotten an early version out sooner. But
he's selling himself short. Like this guy, like I don't know if I'll give you a shameless plug to that's released, right? Your post on developing things fast. And
Yeah. Sergey.com/ship. Talks at Sergey.com/ship. But anyways, no, like yeah, I mean, we moved quickly, but this is something that we took some time and did a good experience of.
Because we really wanted to get it right.
To talk about a few more kind of design decisions we made that, again, were a bit unique and could have been done differently on other platforms. You'll notice we have this like auto saving capability. This is another thing we went back and forth. Seemingly kind of simple decision, but actually has a big impact on how the feature works, right? Is it auto saved, or do you manually click save on updates?
Gotcha. That decision.
So that's why, like, when you see when I tweak these values, right? Like, you'll see this the auto saving here, and that's actually like updating in real time, right? So if I go and I go back, I go to a different page, and then I come back, you can see it's still there. Like, I didn't lose any work, and so that is seamless. And those like little things, I think, go a long way. So that was super cool. The other thing was this editor experience. While it looks like quite simple, one of the things you'll notice right away is this ability to kind of hover over a tag and see what it is. Because this was one of the more challenging product problems that we ran into, was like global theming is pretty intuitive to change as any user coming in, right? You're like, oh, I know what the background is, I know what the foreground is, I know what the outline is. And if you don't, you can see very quickly what it is that changes. Like, you just play around with the colors and then boom, right in front of you. Now, the syntax highlighting isn't so obvious because you might not have this token present in your code, or if it is, it might be really small and hard to notice. And so, or maybe you're trying to target something specific, like this constructor, like this, the keyword, like this variable author, and you don't want to have to try to guess what like token that refers to, because I mean, some of these things are more obvious than others. I know what a comment is, I know what a string is, but I mean, how much am I going to tell what a function definition is or a property name? Like, I don't want to have to think. That's too much, right? And so the nice thing is we do have this kind of little help menu for each, just to kind of give you a brief description of what it is.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the most obvious, but I think it's helpful to just get an understanding of what it is you're changing. But to know exactly what one piece of code and what that represents, you can just highlight over it in the editor. And you'll notice that you'll even have a way to change it from within the editor.
Oh, wow.
So you can just go and click. And this is like...
You're teaching me so many things about these.
First of all, this is like non-trivial to make. It was like kind of hard and fun. But also it was one of those like subtle things that we didn't have to ship with. We didn't have to implement a system like this. But we thought like, hey, this kind of small detail can go a long way to help users really create the perfect theme and syntax highlighting for their theme. Because otherwise it was just a little too difficult and tedious of having to play around and like mess around with these different values. It was too much trial and error. Whereas like, I want to be able to look at this code. Okay, this is a string, and I want to be able to change that string value live from within the editor.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the cooler kind of product features we got to include as part of this.
That's really cool. I think that's a lot to chew on. I think we could end it there. Sergey, it's been awesome. Again, if you guys have any questions or any feedback, I'm going to post this in the Ask forum. And then Sergey, what's your...
At Sergey Chestikov.
Yeah. Follow him, ask him any questions. We'll have DMs soon. So as a teaser. But also, this guy's just a wizard and loves to talk about a lot of different technical aspects of the product. But I'll leave it at that, and we'll end with a high five.
Sweet.
Thanks, man. Right on.